Hey guys, tonight we begin somewhere soft and glimmering, somewhere you've never been, but somehow already know. The air smells faintly of rice starch and peonies. A single candle flickers beside you, throwing amber shapes across the smooth lacquer walls of a Royal Korean bedchamber. Outside, the moon is full, suspended like a pearl over the tiled roofs of the palace. And within these paper-thin walls, time feels sticky and slow. You are kneeling on a mat of finely woven reed, cross-legged beside a low wooden table. In your hands, a slender pestle and a polished jade bowl. You're grinding something down, fine, silken, whisper-light. It's crushed pearl, sifted 3 times and imported all the way from the southern coast. Mixed with rice powder and a dash of mugwort extract, it's meant to go on your face. Not to conceal, not to cover, but to glow. And in the Goryeo court, that glow might be the difference between favor and exile. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're feeling cozy, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where and when you're listening. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The woman beside you is older, your aunt, or perhaps a handmaiden. She watches your technique with a quiet sort of pride, nodding slightly each time the pearl powder catches the light just right. "Don't rush," she murmurs. "A fine glow comes only to the patient." Outside, a nightingale sings from the branches of a plum tree, and in the hush of that ancient courtyard, you begin to understand why this ritual matters so much. You've heard the stories, of course, that Queen Seondeok used a special concoction of gold flakes and honey water, that one royal mistress bathed only in rainwater collected from lotus leaves, that some noble women wore masks made of raw silk, infused with herbs so rare they could buy you a horse. But you also know the truth is slipperier than that. It lies not in the spectacle, but in the repetition. The steady, quiet devotion to beauty, not as vanity, but as survival. Because let's face it, you probably wouldn't survive this era. You're too outspoken. You flinch at the idea of lead-based powder. You don't know how to steep persimmon leaves properly. You laugh too loud. Your nails aren't painted with crushed gardenias. And your handwriting? Please. The emperor would have you writing apology letters for weeks. But here in this dream, you're doing just fine. The scent of burning sandalwood wraps around you as the woman beside you opens a jar carved from celadon. She dips 2 fingers in and dabs a creamy substance onto your wrist. It's cool, slippery, slightly sticky. The main ingredient? Night ginseng, harvested only on the first full moon of autumn, supposed to draw toxins from the skin and, oddly, from the soul. You rub it in, and a tingle dances up your arm. Historians still argue whether the Goryeo elite genuinely believed in the medicinal power of their cosmetics, or if it was all cultural theatre. Were these creams truly healing? Or were they coded performances like the careful bowing, the layers of hammock, the poetry etched in ink so pale it was practically invisible? Either way, they worked, if working means you look like moonlight and didn't get exiled for having the wrong cheekbone texture. The jars line the shelves beside you, powdered amber, fermented mung bean paste, flower oils distilled through hand-woven silk cloths. Every single mixture has its story. Some were handed down for generations. Others were whispered in bathhouses. A few were smuggled in from China or adapted from Buddhist medicinal texts. And every so often, one was discovered accidentally, like the infamous swan balm, which someone mixed up while trying to pickle radishes. Your aunt nudges you. "Don't forget behind the ears," she says. "That's where secrets gather." You smile faintly, not because it's funny, though it is, but because it's one of those old sayings people repeat even when they've forgotten why, like, "Never wear white on a cloudy day," or "Don't trust a man who smells of peach blossoms." Superstition? Wisdom? Who knows? In this era, those two are often the same thing. You glance up, and through the rice paper windows you catch a flicker of movement. A servant girl crosses the courtyard, balancing a stack of jade bowls. She's heading toward the Queen's quarters, where a much grander skincare ritual is about to begin, one involving no fewer than 13 ingredients, 2 chanting monks, and a comb made from tortoiseshell. Meanwhile, a cicada hums nearby, blending with the soft crunch of your mortar. You lean back for a moment, rolling your neck, your face faintly tingling from the pearl powder. Somewhere across the city, the scholars are reciting Confucian classics. But here, in this little chamber, your only lesson is how to glow. And it is a lesson, because in this world, beauty isn't just surface, it's a social language. The right complexion means purity, nobility, refinement. The wrong one? Laziness, illness, shame. You're painting more than a face. You're painting a story, one that says, I belong. And maybe that's the real secret ingredient, not the ginseng or the pearl, or the oil of plum blossom, but the unspoken hunger to belong. You rise, wash your hands in a bowl of warmed chrysanthemum water, and reach for your lacquered mirror. It's not glass. Mirrors were polished bronze back then. Your reflection is slightly distorted, but still beautiful. Glowing, ethereal, almost like you're not quite here. The next morning smells faintly of charcoal and dried herbs. You're already awake, though the sun hasn't yet crept above the horizon. Pale light filters through the silk curtains, brushing the room with a hush of silver. You sit at the same low table, but now your fingers are slightly stained, faint traces of red from the safflower rouge you mixed last night. A servant has brought fresh water in a ceramic jug, and beside it a folded cloth embroidered with lotus petals. Time to begin again. You dip the cloth into the cool water and press it gently to your cheeks. The sensation is almost electric, as if each pore recognizes this ritual and exhales a tiny sigh of relief. You dry your face with careful pats, no rubbing, no harsh friction. That would anger the skin spirits, or at least your aunt would say so. The Goryeo glow you've been chasing wasn't some ancient whim. It was a full-blown aesthetic ideology, grounded in more than just face creams. Pale, clear skin was not only desirable, it was symbolic. A smooth, bright complexion reflected inner purity, calmness of character, and even moral discipline. Buddhism, which had deeply penetrated Goryeo society, didn't just influence temples and scrolls, it influenced beauty. Radiance of the skin was seen as radiance of the soul. You start mixing today's first balm, powdered rice soaked in chrysanthemum tea, folded with mashed mung beans. It smells like breakfast, but your face will thank you later. With the back of a wooden spoon, you press the mixture into a smooth paste, watching it shift like wet sand. It's oddly satisfying, almost meditative. Historians still argue whether these early Korean beauty rituals were strictly spiritual or deeply cosmetic. Did women believe they were invoking divine clarity? Or were they just trying to impress a passing courtier with luminous cheeks? Most likely, both. You smear the paste gently across your skin. It's cooling, calming, as if centuries of anxious noblewomen are whispering, "Relax, this won't change your rank, but it might get the head chef to smile at you." Outside, bells begin to chime softly across the capital. You know what that means. Time for royal court to gather, but not you. You're not in the mood to debate tax reforms or poetry today. You want to explore something more mysterious, why this glowing skin ideal became so deeply embedded in your world. It's not just about aesthetics, it's about social survival. You see, in the Goryeo dynasty, beauty wasn't separated from class. If your skin was tan, blemished, or rough, it suggested labor, manual, outdoor work under the brutal sun. In contrast, pale skin implied luxury, time spent indoors in shaded quarters, away from the crude winds of common life. You weren't sweating over rice paddies, you were sipping herbal infusions and reading love poetry. So yes, skincare was status care, and that's when things started to get weird, because people didn't stop at rice powder. Oh no, they began adding strange things like jade, real jade, ground into dust so fine it shimmered like frost. Supposedly, jade cooled the blood, calmed inflammation, and helped the body recognize its own clarity, whatever that means. There's a fringe theory that jade was also used to harmonize your qi, a concept imported from Chinese Taoist alchemy. Korean herbalists believed skin health was tied to liver function, and since jade was thought to soothe the liver, voila, you're basically rubbing liver medicine onto your forehead. A bold move, especially before breakfast. And yet it worked, or at least it felt like it worked. The soft sheen, the ritual care, the transformation each morning, it created a sense of control in a world where so much wasn't. Your marriage could be arranged, your dowry debated, your siblings pitted against one another. But your skin? That, at least, was yours. You hear your aunt's footsteps before you see her. She slides open the door and peers at you with approval. You're glowing like a bodhisattva, she says, handing you a folded piece of silk. Inside, a tiny sachet of powdered ginseng and foxglove root. You raise an eyebrow. Special occasion? She smirks. You tell me. You don't ask questions. You just smile. The sun has risen now. As risen now, brushing the rooftops with gold. Out in the market, vendors are setting up their stalls. You can hear them calling out prices for dried persimmons, bundles of herbs, and ceramic bottles filled with face toner. Yes, toner. It existed, a mixture of cucumber water and crushed mint, bottled in delicate blue jars that sold out faster than fermented cabbage in winter. Beauty was a business, even back then, but it was also something more, something quiet, sacred. A daily prayer said not in words but in balm and powder. You weren't trying to look young, you were trying to look eternal, like a poem carved in jade, like moonlight over snow. There's a small mirror on the table, polished bronze, slightly warped, but good enough to reflect the journey your face has taken. You lean in close, studying the brightness beneath your eyes. It's not just the pearl powder, it's sleep, it's ginseng, it's history, and maybe it's belief. The courtyard is quiet now, save for the occasional swish of silk robes and the delicate patter of broom bristles sweeping fallen petals. You step out of your chamber barefoot. The polished stones cool beneath your feet. Overhead, a morning haze wraps the sky in translucent silk. Somewhere in the distance, a gong sounds, 3 soft strikes, signaling the opening of the palace's inner gardens. You pass beneath a carved gate, its beams lacquered in crimson and black, and step into a sanctuary that smells like memory. Damp earth, fresh pine, and something sweeter, mugwort maybe, or plum blossom just beginning to bloom. This is where the real magic starts, not the royal courts, not the scrolls or the powders, right here in the secret gardens of beauty. The path forks into 3 trails, to the left rows of carefully pruned ginseng plants. In the center, a shallow pond reflecting the fluttering wings of dragonflies. And to the right, yes, your destination, a patch of mugwort and perilla leaves, wild and low to the ground, their fragrance warm and sharp. These herbs aren't ornamental. They're medicine, art, and industry rolled into one. Women of the court come here often, not just to stroll or sip tea, but to pluck the raw ingredients of their daily radiance. You kneel beside a bed of fragrant artemisia, gently pinching off the newest leaves. These will be crushed, steeped, and strained into tomorrow's face wash, or perhaps dried and powdered into a skin-calming balm. Historians still argue whether these royal herb gardens were strictly curated for cosmetics or shared with the temple apothecaries. Some believe palace physicians managed every plant with scientific precision. Others say the women themselves took charge, guided by whispered recipes and the moon's position. Either way, it wasn't just about beauty. These plants formed the living, breathing materia medica of the era. You move deeper into the garden, past a cluster of honeysuckle vines winding up a lattice. Tiny yellow blossoms tremble in the breeze, their scent soft and sleepy. Just beyond, ginseng roots curl beneath the soil like secrets. You don't dig them up, they're sacred. Harvesting ginseng too soon could invite bad luck, or worse, a pimple on a festival day. The woman beside you, perhaps your cousin or a palace friend, grins as she pinches a leaf and brings it to her nose. "This one smells like my old tutor," she says. You stifle a laugh. "Must have been wise then." She rolls her eyes. Wise? He thought garlic cured heartbreak. She's not entirely wrong. The Goryeo people used garlic in everything from broths to foot soaks, claiming it purified the blood and warded off evil dreams. They also used soybean paste as a skin-tightening mask. And if you were particularly daring, there was a controversial recipe involving fermented deer placenta. Let's not try that one just yet. Your friend plucks a few chrysanthemum flowers, placing them in a woven pouch tied at her waist. "This," she says, "will go into my bath tonight." The petals are soft as breath, and the colour, the exact pale yellow of early morning, feels like a secret the sun hasn't quite shared yet. Did the queens themselves walk these paths, basket in hand, stooping to gather dandelion roots and fennel? Probably not. But their court ladies did, and those women weren't just collectors. They were mixers, testers, innovators, tiny-scale chemists with patience and calloused fingertips. You pass a patch of blooming azaleas. Beautiful, yes, but deadly in large doses. There's a story about one concubine who mistook azalea leaves for edible herbs and nearly collapsed during a royal banquet. Some say it was an accident. Others whisper it was sabotage. The line between beauty and danger was always razor-thin. And here's where it gets quirky. One fringe belief claimed that touching certain plants under specific moon phases would charge them with celestial energy. Mugwort harvested at dawn during the spring equinox, said to erase age spots. Perilla leaves picked under a waning crescent moon allegedly brightened the eyes. There's no proof, of course, but the rituals persisted, because sometimes belief is its own ingredient. You pause beneath a pear tree watching a honeybee wobble from blossom to blossom. Beneath the branches lies a smooth stone bench, cool and inviting. You sit, the sachet of herbs resting in your lap, and close your eyes for a moment. You imagine a time when these gardens were more crowded, when laughter spilled between rows of hydrangea and footsteps rustled bamboo leaves, when noblewomen whispered recipes and swapped tips like alchemists trading secrets. Rub ginseng on your temples if your thoughts get foggy, one might say. Boil camellia seeds for hair oil, another would reply. Never use plum oil after midsummer. It attracts dreams too strong to bear. You wonder how many of those voices were remembered, and how many faded like dried petals in a forgotten pouch. Still seated, you open your pouch again and inhale. The mingled aroma of mugwort, chrysanthemum, mint, and something unplaceable, earthy, rich, almost honeyed, fills your senses. You breathe deeper, not because it will change your skin, but because it anchors you, because for a brief glimmering moment you belong here. A young palace attendant passes by with a tray balanced on one hand. On it, 3 celadon jars, lids tied with string. She doesn't speak, but her glance says everything. These ingredients will be needed soon. The Queen has a midday audience, and she'll want to look as radiant as a painted scroll. You rise from the bench, dust your hands on your robe, and glance around one last time. The garden continues behind you, but you've gathered enough for now. Tomorrow, perhaps, you'll explore the hidden grove where orchids bloom against black rock, or the spot near the west wall where rare mushrooms sprout after rain. For now, your skin smells like morning, and your hands like history. The hallway hums with the shuffle of silk slippers. You walk slowly, carrying your sachet of gathered herbs while a pale morning breeze drifts through the papered corridors of the palace. The light slants through wooden latticework, painting your path with honey-gold lines. Somewhere nearby, someone is practicing the gayarjum, its melancholy strings fluttering faintly like a dream already fading. You duck through a lower doorframe and descend into a smaller room, tucked away near the physician's quarters. It smells stronger here, sharper, Tangier? As if all the herbs in the garden above have condensed and steeped themselves into the very air. This is where the scrolls are kept. Not the grand ceremonial ones inked by court scholars. No, these are personal, practical, tucked in lacquered boxes and bound with faded ribbons. You kneel beside a low shelf and slide one out, a little crooked, its corners bent. On the front, a single character for skin, written with the wobbly elegance of someone who cared more about creams than calligraphy. You open it. The pages are delicate and yellowing, but the contents, oh, they are alive. Recipes, ratios, notes in the margins. Some are detailed to the point of obsession. Crush 6 mung beans at midnight. Boil with deer horn slivers for exactly 11 breaths. Apply to the neck while whispering an apology. Others are blunt and hilarious. Fox bile stinks. Use bear bile, not as green. The apothecary who wrote this, you realize, had both a wicked sense of humor and a dangerously open mind. Bear bile, deer antler shavings, and even tiny amounts of turtle shell dust were all common in the more experimental creams of the era. And while modern you is already queasy, historical you is intrigued. You run your finger down a column of faded ink. One recipe catches your eye: fermented bean cream with rice vinegar and a pinch of dried plum blossom. It promises to lighten dark spots, calm hot skin, and ward off loneliness. Yes, loneliness. The scroll offers no explanation for how a face cream could cure existential dread. But, honestly, you're willing to try. Historians still argue whether these handwritten apothecary scrolls were strictly medicinal or a blend of beauty, folk magic, and mood management. The ingredients often served overlapping purposes. Ginseng for energy, ginseng for skin. Mugwort for inflammation, mugwort for nightmares. Rice powder for oil control, and possibly for ensuring your crush noticed you at the poetry recital. You reach for a shallow ceramic bowl and begin preparing the fermented bean cream from the scroll. You mash the beans with a wooden pestle, stirring slowly as the mixture thickens into a strange but pleasant-smelling paste. Vinegar adds a sharpness that clears your sinuses. You stir in the plum blossom powder, watching as the cream takes on a faint blush. The texture is rich, satisfying. You dip 2 fingers in and smooth it across your cheeks. At first, it's cold, like waking from a nap too soon, but then warmth, a deep, humming warmth, not just on your skin, but beneath it, in your throat, in your thoughts. Your aunt appears at the doorway, peering at your concoction. "Still using vinegar?" she teases. "You'll smell like pickled radish." You grin. "Better than fox bile." She steps in and sits beside you, lifting another scroll from the shelf. This one's more brittle, wrapped in oil paper. "This," she says, "was written by a monk, claimed he could cure heartbreak with lotus paste and patience." She unrolls it with reverence. The ink is faded almost to invisibility. As she reads, you notice the margins are full of symbols, moons, tiny plum trees, cloud swirls. It feels less like a recipe and more like a prayer. You imagine the monk in a mountain temple crushing lotus petals at dawn, humming to himself while the mist curled around his knees. And then the oddest entry yet: "For radiance after morning, mix apricot oil with 1 tear." Just 1 tear, not 2, not none. Was it metaphor? Was it literal? Did he cry into the bowl each time, or did he keep a secret jar of sorrow stored behind the altar? You don't ask. You simply copy the recipe down, just in case. It's becoming clear now. These creams weren't just about appearance. They were miniature rituals, containers of memory, grief, hope, a form of quiet resistance against the chaos of court life. When you couldn't control your fate, you controlled your glow. And there was risk. The records mention a noblewoman who used the wrong mushroom in her wrinkle cream. Her skin blistered for weeks. Another used too much sulfur powder and was temporarily banned from palace events for offending the heir. A very polite way to say she stank. But mistakes didn't stop the innovation. They only added cautionary footnotes. Your aunt finishes reading and closes the scroll. That monk, she murmurs, was a little mad. But he knew beauty and sadness walk the same path. You nod. The cream on your face has dried now, forming a thin veil. Not quite a mask, more like a second skin. You lean toward the polished bronze mirror on the shelf, tilting it so the light hits just right. The reflection shimmers back, subtle, golden, oddly peaceful. You think of the monk's tear, and for a moment you feel something shift. Your skin doesn't just look different, you feel different, calmer, brighter, like a story told in scent and touch rather than ink or voice. The scroll slips from your aunt's lap, and she catches it before it hits the floor. She smiles. "Tomorrow," she says, "we'll try the one with pine pollen and silk threads." You nod, because of course you will. Because tomorrow always brings another balm, another recipe, another whispered hope. And because here, in this little chamber of scent and scrolls, you are part of something older than beauty. You are part of a lineage of glowing, dreaming, quietly defiant women. Later that evening, you find yourself in another quiet corner of the palace, one rarely visited unless summoned. The walls are lined with shelves, each shelf packed tight with small wooden boxes tied shut with silk string. No one labels them, no one needs to. Each box has a smell that tells its own story. Earthy, briny, bitter, sweet. You've come looking for something strange, and you're not alone. A young servant girl named Soyi is with you, eyes bright with mischief and curiosity. She's heard rumors, whispers of a beauty, secret so rare, so precious, it's kept behind this very door. She swears by it, and by swears you suspect she means she eavesdropped on a royal concubine talking in her sleep. You reach for one of the smaller boxes near the back. It's heavier than expected, cold. Inside, wrapped in layers of rice paper and seaweed, is a translucent pouch. Something like jelly, something like ghost skin. You squint. Is that a fish bladder? Soyi's beams. "Sturgeon," she says proudly. "Very rare. They say it's like putting silk clouds on your face." You're skeptical, understandably, but also a little intrigued. See, in the medieval Korean beauty scene, fish weren't just food, they were full of strange cosmetic potential, especially the air bladders of certain fish, which once cleaned, dried and soaked, could be rehydrated into a sort of natural collagen sheet, a proto-face mask, if you will. Historians still argue whether these fish-based treatments were inspired by Chinese alchemical practices or born of Korea's own coastal ingenuity. Either way, someone figured out that fish bits could make you glow, and someone else was bold enough to try it. You gently unfold the delicate membrane, holding it up to the light. It's slightly iridescent, like a dragonfly wing. Soyi watches you, barely containing her glee. "Now just lay it across your face," she says, "and don't scream." You shoot her a look. The sensation is wild. It clings immediately, cold and sticky, not unpleasant, just shocking. You feel like you're wearing the ocean's whisper, and yes, you kind of want to scream. But instead, you laugh, softly. The kind of laugh that bubbles up when you realize something is completely ridiculous and yet absolutely perfect. As you sit there, fish bladder mask melting slightly into your cheeks, your thoughts drift. There's a story of a royal mistress who used eel slime for her night serum. Said it smoothed fine lines and helped her land a poet as a lover. Another tale claims one queen bathed in carp broth, not for hydration, but because it supposedly sharpened her intuition. Whether true or not, the belief stuck. And of course, there was the jellyfish lotion. It wasn't real jellyfish, just a mix of fermented kelp and crushed shells that, when processed correctly, took on a jelly-like consistency. Applied cold, it was believed to reduce swelling, brighten skin, and invite benevolent dreams. What made these treatments endure wasn't just their effectiveness, it was the ritual, the sense of rare luxury. These weren't daily creams for casual use. These were reserved for moments when everything mattered, a royal meeting, a secret rendezvous, the anniversary of a late mother's passing, emotional days, sacred nights. The fish bladder mask begins to dry, tightening slightly, not painfully, but firmly, like your skin is being coaxed into remembering how it used to be, before stress, before sun, before heartbreak. Soyi sits beside you now, applying something from her own pouch, a salve made of fermented seaweed and barley. "My mother taught me this," she says. "For when your face forgets it's part of your body." You nod, not entirely sure what she means, but understanding anyway. You think of the many women who've sat just like this, in chambers like these, trying creams made from animal bits, roots, seafoam and sunlight. Desperate for a moment of peace, a little clarity, a tiny sense of being seen. Not just by others, but by themselves. Fish bladders, eel slime, crushed mollusks. It all sounds absurd, until you remember that even now, centuries later, modern brands still chase those ancient miracles. Marine collagen, snail mucin, sheet masks made of kelp fibre. Welcome to the Full Circle Club. The mask peels away with a sigh. You rinse your face in a bowl of rose water left nearby. The reflection that greets you is radiant, dewy, strange, familiar. Your skin feels lifted, cooled, softened, but more than that, you feel oddly brave, as if this odd little ritual has armored you in moonlight. Outside, the night has settled in. The wind rustles the bamboo leaves, and somewhere a guard yawns beside a flickering torch. You and Soyi pack up the used materials and step out into the corridor, quiet as clouds. You don't speak, you don't need to. The world smells like plum blossom and the sea, and your face, it glows. You wake before the sun again, just as the sky turns that gentle shade of pre-dawn indigo. The sleeping palace exhales in creaks and soft shifting wood. Somewhere a rooster coughs, not crows coughs, as if even it isn't quite ready to begin the day. But you are, because today is Powder Day. You've saved this ritual for a special morning, one where your skin feels clear, calm and ready. You stretch, wash your face in cool, lotus-infused water, and sit at your table. Laid out before you are small lacquered boxes, a set of delicate brushes, and one prized compact carved from bone. Inside it, a fine white powder made from, wait for it, crushed rice, pearl, and a pinch of powdered lead. Yep, lead. Historians still argue how widely lead-based face powders were used in Goryeo, Korea. Some say it was common among the nobility, imported from China or made in secret court kitchens. Others suggest it was mostly theatrical, applied in tiny amounts and quickly wiped off. Either way, the ideal remained, a face like porcelain, untouched by sun or sorrow. You swirl a soft brush through the powder, tap off the excess, and gently sweep it across your cheeks. The effect is instant, ethereal. Like your skin has been kissed by snowfall, the powder settles into every hollow and curve, muting shadows, reflecting light. Suddenly, you don't just look noble, you feel unapproachably serene, a ghost of yourself, but prettier. You add a touch to your forehead, chin, even your earlobes. Because yes, in the Goryeo court, glowing ears were apparently a thing. Your aunt once said, "A woman's powder tells the truth, her eyes won't." You didn't understand that at the time, but now, watching your reflection soften into something almost surreal, you get it. Powder wasn't just makeup, it was armor, a shield between your emotions and the world's expectations. You glance over at the shelf where your jars sit, camellia oil for hair, safflower for lips, and your favorite, the mugwort and jade toner that smells like rainy days and clean silk. The palace, now fully awake, starts to stir. Servants clatter trays down stone halls. Paper doors slide open and closed. You can hear the high-pitched laughter of young noblewomen from the dressing quarters. Someone is reciting poetry with dramatic flair. Someone else is sobbing over a split nail. It's a powder day for everyone, apparently. You step into the courtyard, your skin matte and luminous, your cheeks just faintly tinged with crushed safflower. The effect is captivating. You pass a mirror hanging beneath the eaves, bronze, warped, but still honest. In the dim morning light, you look like someone who knows exactly who she is. Powder in medieval Korea wasn't only about beauty, it was about placement. The right kind of powder, rice-based for oil control, pearl for luminescence, lead for whitening, told a story. A visual resume. Even the pattern of application mattered. Some women painted only the center of their faces, leaving the edges bare for contrast. Others powdered the entire face, neck, and even their arms for an otherworldly glow. One aristocrat was said to powder only her nose, claiming it made her seem more mysterious. It just made her nose look huge, but no one had the heart to tell her. And then there were the social implications. A heavily powdered face in the morning suggested high rank and a leisurely day indoors. Light powder at night, an invitation, flirtatious, maybe even rebellious. No powder at all, that was a political statement, or a fashion emergency, or both. You walk past the main chamber and spot a group of scholar officials hurrying by. One of them catches your eye and blushes. Is it the powder, the glow, the fact that you didn't look at him twice? Doesn't matter, you feel untouchable. And that, more than any ingredient, is what makes it work. But powdered beauty came with rules. There were etiquette codes, written and unwritten, about how much to wear and when. Too little, and you seemed careless. Too much, and you risked being seen as vain. There were even cases where over-powdered women were quietly mocked in poetry. She enters like mist, but departs like chalk. Not exactly flattering. Of course, powder wasn't just for women. Men, especially scholar officials and high-ranking bureaucrats, used a subtler version, usually rice-based, sometimes mixed with ground jade, to harmonize their appearance. A smooth, even face suggested clarity of thought, because naturally blotchy skin means flawed arguments, right? One fringe belief held that too much powder would soften the bones. Another claimed that powdered cheeks made it easier for spirits to see your soul. That's probably why some people powdered their faces before praying or before funerals. The day drifts on. You touch up your cheeks once after lunch, then again just before sunset. A light reapplication with a rabbit hair brush. You don't want to seem too perfect. Just perfect enough. In the evening, you sit at your mirror once more and begin the delicate task of wiping it all away. Warm water, soft cloth, gentle circles. The powder melts into the cloth, leaving behind your real skin, bare, slightly pink, quietly alive. And as you lean forward, studying your reflection, you realize something. You don't look lesser without the powder. You just look more you. The sky is a soft indigo once more, deepening toward plum as lanterns flicker to life one by one along the outer walkways. You retreat indoors, your skin freshly washed, the scent of camellia oil lingering faintly at your temples. Tonight, the air inside the women's quarters is warmer than usual, filled with quiet conversation and the rustle of silk garments. It's the kind of evening when secrets are passed more easily, when rituals are performed not for spectacle, but for intimacy. You step into the inner chamber where 5 or 6 noble women, daughters of ministers, wives of scholars, cousins of court physicians, have gathered around a table low to the floor. They're laughing gently, sharing rice crackers and sips of ginger tea. In front of them, a mess of tiny jars, folded paper packets, brushes, combs, and soft cloths stained with lip tint. The air smells faintly of cloves and fermented beans. You sit down among them, and no one blinks. These women know you. Not just your name or your family, but your skin type, your favorite rouge, your stubborn refusal to pluck your eyebrows. It's not a formal gathering. It's not even entirely permitted, but it's understood. This is where the true beauty secrets live, not in scrolls, but in whispered voices passed from mother to daughter, sister to sister, friend to friend. Someone offers you a bowl of something murky and grey-green. You hesitate. She grins. It's for under the eyes, mugwort and black sesame. You'll wake up looking like you've never worried in your life. You apply it anyway. It smells like your grandmother's garden after rain. Historians still argue whether these informal gatherings were acts of rebellion or simply routine. Was sharing forbidden or exotic cosmetic recipes an act of female agency? Or was it just what happened when people with too much time and too many mirrors found themselves in the same room? You lean closer as another woman, older with laugh lines like embroidery, opens a jar and stirs its contents with a hairpin. "My mother taught me this one," she murmurs. "Ginseng, honey, and—" wait for it, "a drop of deer milk." You blink. "Deer milk?" She nods. "From the Highlands. My uncle brought it back in a gourd. It's temperamental." She dips a finger in and dabs it behind her ears. "It's not for beauty," she adds. "It's for memory." No one questions that. You realize something then. Beauty here isn't about vanity, it's about inheritance, ritual, memory. It's a way to preserve something in a world that's always changing. Your mother's voice, your aunt's laugh, your grandmother's silence. Each recipe is a story, a memory suspended in oil and crushed flower petals. The conversation drifts, as it often does, from ingredients to experiences. One woman confesses she once used tree sap as lip gloss. Another describes a time she stole a pinch of the Queen's powder just to see if it made her dreams sweeter. The group gasps, then dissolves into laughter. It did not. You begin preparing your own favorite balm. Ground adzuki beans mixed with glutinous rice water and a splash of camellia oil. You mash it slowly, methodically, the same way your mother once showed you. You remember her hands, soft but precise, always slightly cool, always scented faintly of yuzu peel. There's a quiet pride in this act, a kind of private alchemy. You could buy similar balms from market vendors or palace attendants, sure, but those were impersonal, pre-measured, stripped of story. This one is yours. You scoop the mixture into a small celadon jar and press a square of silk over the top, tying it shut with a red thread. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the bamboo chimes. One of the younger girls in the circle shivers. "Do you think ghosts can smell face cream?" she whispers. No one laughs. Instead, the older woman with the deer milk replies without hesitation. "Yes, that's how they remember us." You sip your ginger tea and lean back against the cushion. You feel light. Not just clean or pretty, but seen. Understood. Safe. One of the women pulls out a folded cloth and begins trimming it into shapes, simple circles, heart-shaped patches, crescent moons. Eye masks. She dips them into a bowl of cooling tea, ginseng and chrysanthemum, and hands them around. You press the damp cloth under your eyes, feeling the chill seep into your skin. "You know," someone murmurs, "I think this is the real beauty." "Right here." She's right. These quiet nights, the laughter, the strange ingredients and stranger memories. This is the glow no powder can replicate. The radiance that comes from trust, from ritual, from knowing that somewhere in a chamber, amber lit by candlelight and flavoured with ginger, someone understands you. You catch your reflection in the mirror beside the door. Barefaced, eyes shining, cheeks flushed from warmth and tea. You look luminous, not because of any cream, but because you are surrounded by people who see your face not as something to fix, but as something to remember. Later that night, when the others have drifted off to their mats or tucked themselves behind folding screens, you stay behind. The lanterns have burned low, casting long amber shadows that stretch like ribbons across the lacquered floor. You're alone now in the women's quarters, except for the soft breathing of someone already deep in sleep and the faint rustle of wind brushing against the paper walls. You reach for a small jar on the shelf, the one with the green glaze, smooth and slightly cracked at the rim. Celadon. It's heavy in your palm, its rounded form cool like river stone. You know this jar well. You've used it for years, ever since it was passed down from your aunt. Before her, it belonged to her aunt, and before that, to someone whose name is no longer spoken, but whose skin must have glowed like moonlit snow. Celadon. Not just pottery, not just pretty, it's a statement, a storage miracle, and a quietly revolutionary technology. You lift the lid. Inside, a salve the color of pale gold waits patiently, made from apricot kernel oil, finely ground jade, and a whisper of pine resin. It smells faintly of citrus and stone. You stir it with a carved spoon, smooth, almost silky in its texture, and apply it gently to your temples, then to the corners of your mouth. Historians still debate whether Celadon was chosen for its practical properties, cooling, airtight, and stable, or because of the aesthetic harmony it offered. The greenish hue was considered spiritually calming, a color of the in-between. Not quite jade, not quite sky, something resting softly in the realm of dreams. The more you study the jar, the more you realize how deep the beauty industry reached. It wasn't just about creams and powders, it extended to what you stored them in. These weren't crude clay pots. These were finely thrown vessels, glazed with such precision that emperors in distant lands wrote poems about them. Some of the highest-grade Celadon jars were reserved solely for cosmetics, smaller, perfectly proportioned, often sealed with silk-tied lids or waxed stoppers. Owning one, especially one with an inlay design, meant you weren't just someone with good skin, you were someone important. There's a quirky story about a palace woman who refused to share her night balm unless it was stored in a vessel made by the hands of a master potter and cooled under moonlight. Her reasoning? Only the moon understands skin as well as I do. The other women laughed until they tried the cream and swore they'd never use anything else. You replace the lid on your jar and sit back against a woven cushion, letting the scent linger. The Celadon's soft green sheen catches the flickering candlelight, throwing a ghost glow onto the wall. You can imagine the workshops where these jars were made, furnaces roaring like dragons, potters hunched over spinning wheels, hands caked in clay, sweat glistening on their brows. Artisans whose work was never signed, but whose pieces ended up cradling the most delicate and personal parts of the royal household. Was the cream better because it came from a Celadon jar? Probably not, but somehow it felt more powerful. Somehow it more intentional. And in this world, feelings had weight. You look across the room at the other jars lining the shelf. A taller one for rosewater toner, a shallow dish for rice paste masks, a tiny round box for cheek rouge. Each container tells a story, not just of its contents, but of its creation, of the hands that shaped it, of the fires that hardened it, of the rituals it served. There's a certain magic in that. In knowing your beauty regimen is also a collaboration across time between the woman who applied the cream, the apothecary who mixed it, and the potter who made the jar. Each left fingerprints you'll never see but somehow still feel. You press your palm gently to the Celadon's side. It's warm now, absorbing the heat from your hand. You wonder who else has held this same jar. Who else pressed this balm to her temples, seeking rest, radiance, or release? The wind outside shifts again, bringing with it the faintest trace of something floral, perhaps jasmine, or perhaps just memory. You close your eyes. Somewhere in the palace, a guard coughs, a bird rustles its feathers. And you? You remain perfectly still, perfectly silent, cradling a beauty secret that's less about skin and more about story. Because here, in the soft shadows of the Goryeo night, in a room filled with whispers and jars and history glazed in soft green light, you understand the truth. Glow doesn't come from powder, it comes from presence. By the time the rooster finally remembers how to crow properly, you're already up. The palace stirs with a slow, rhythmic grace, the slap of sandals on stone, the rustle of bamboo blinds being drawn aside, the low clinking of breakfast bowls being set in place. But today, you're not staying inside. You drape a light shawl over your shoulders, tuck a small jar into your sash, and make your way beyond the inner gates. This morning, you're going off script. The royal gardens and quarters are a sanctuary, yes, but they're not the whole story. Beyond the courtyards and painted beams past the gate where eunuchs half nod at you with politely tired eyes, there's another world, the real world, the village. You take a side path, one worn down by foot traffic and lined with low stone walls where moss grows in little curls. A dog trots past with the air of someone late for an important meeting. And soon you begin to hear the familiar sounds of village life. Pots clanking, voices calling out greetings, the rhythmic thump of laundry being beaten against smooth river rocks. The bathhouse stands low and squat near the edge of a creek. It smells of steam, pine smoke, and mugwort, always mugwort. Women gather here every morning, just as they have for generations. You slip off your shoes, step inside, and are immediately hit with a wall of humidity and laughter. It's different here, earthier, louder, freer. A group of women sits cross-legged around a basin chatting as they mash barley into a paste with wide wooden paddles. You recognize one of them from a past visit. Her skin weathered but radiant, her voice always one octave louder than it needs to be. She grins when she sees you. "Look who remembered she's got legs that walk outside a palace." You laugh, kneel beside her, and pull the jar from your sash. "I brought a trade," you say. She opens it, sniffs, raises an eyebrow. "Ginseng and what's that peony root? Fancy. All right, you can sit." And just like that, you're in. While the palace women speak in low tones, painting creams with brushes and dipping cloths in floral infusions, here they just scoop things with their fingers and slap them on. Barley paste, fermented bean mash, crushed pine needles. It's all blended in great bowls and passed around like soup. Someone adds a splash of vinegar. Someone else mutters, "Too much," and tosses in dried persimmon peels to balance it out. Historians still argue whether these village concoctions were primitive alternatives or equally effective, if not more so, than royal recipes. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. The ingredients may have been humble, but the knowledge behind them ran deep. Folk wisdom passed down in markets and kitchens, not scrolls. You smear the barley mash across your face. It's grainy, cool, oddly comforting. A child nearby shrieks as her mother rubs bean paste onto her cheeks. "Hold still," the mother says, "or your face will turn into a turnip." You grin. You kind of hope it does. One woman beside you is using what looks like charcoal mixed with sesame oil to exfoliate her arms. Another pulls out a packet of dried kelp and starts chewing on a corner. "Good for the skin," she says between bites. "Also tastes like sadness." You sit back, paste drying on your face, and look around. The bathhouse walls are streaked with soot and steam, the floor slick with water and herbs. Outside, the creek gurgles softly, and laundry flaps in the wind like sleepy birds. There are no celadon jars here, no bone-carved spoons, just hands, working, scrubbing, sharing. And yet the glow here is just as real. You think of the Queen's bath, her 13-ingredient masks, her perfumed oils pressed by chanting monks, and then you think of the barley paste on your cheeks, the laughter of these women, the pine smoke caught in your hair. Different tools, same purpose. One woman leans over and whispers, "I once sold a cream to a court lady, told her it was made from phoenix tears." She pauses for effect. It was just goat milk and morning dew, but she paid 5 silver for it. You laugh so hard the paste cracks across your face. As the sun rises higher, women begin rinsing their masks in the creek, splashing each other, drying off with sun-warmed cloths. The bathhouse begins to empty, the day pulling everyone back to their duties. Laundry, cooking, mending nets. You stay a little longer, rinsing your face slowly, feeling the cold water wash away the last traces of the mask. The reflection in the creek is blurry, shifting, but you can still make out the glow, maybe even stronger than yesterday's powdered perfection. You walk back to the palace slowly, your skin tingling, your sash, now empty. The jar you brought has been traded for a fist-sized soapstone filled with barley powder and wild honey. You tuck it into your sleeve. Back inside the gates, the air feels different, quieter, polished, but your skin carries a memory of steam and laughter, of mossy stones and goat milk masquerading as myth, and when you sit back down at your mirror, it hits you. Beauty isn't either or. It's not celadon or stone, not pearl cream or barley paste. It's both, all of it, a spectrum of care, carried in jars and jokes, in whispers and water bowls, in palaces and bathhouses alike. The moon is high again, round, wide, watching. You lie on your mat, skin still dewy from your creekside rinse, when a soft knock echoes at the chamber door. A pause. Then another knock, this one slower, deliberate. You open it to find a figure cloaked in midnight blue robes, sandals dusty from travel, a monk, not one you recognize, but not entirely a stranger either. His presence carries that peculiar temple air, burnt pine, candle wax, and aged ink. In his hand, a scroll, thin, frayed, sealed with wax, the colour of dried plum. He bows, speaks softly. From the mountain temple. A record of remedies. He presses it into your hands, then vanishes down the hallway as if carried by smoke. You return inside, peel back the wax, and unfurl the scroll on your lap. Its ink is faded, the strokes delicate, almost shy. Not a cosmetic manual, not quite medical, something in between. These aren't formulas for beauty, they're elixirs of something older, quieter. A blend of healing and harmony, a different kind of glow. You read the first entry aloud under your breath. To clear the skin of grief, blend lotus root with rice vinegar and chant 3 names forgotten by time. You blink. That's not a skin remedy, it's a poem. You keep reading. For brightness in the eyes after betrayal, ginseng, dried in temple wind, steeped in warm dew, use only at sunrise. It's not practical, not even remotely logical, and yet you find yourself intrigued. Because maybe, just maybe, healing was never meant to be practical. Historians still argue whether Buddhist monks in medieval Korea played an active role in cosmetic culture or merely documented it. Some say monks, especially those stationed near court temples, provided formulations for skin treatments under the guise of spiritual purity. Others argue that monks actively avoided vanity but quietly traded in restorative ointments when requested by noble patrons. You trace your fingers across the scroll. The texture of the paper is soft, worn like the surface of a stone smoothed by centuries of hands. The next recipe is simpler. To balance the face after sorrow, crush fig leaves, soak in rice water, apply with silence. No measurements, no boiling times, just sensations, moments, states of being. You wonder whether these recipes were meant for the body or the soul, or perhaps monks didn't see a difference. Outside, the cicadas hum in waves. You close your eyes, imagining yourself not as a court lady, not even as a daughter of nobility, but as a temple keeper, rising with the sun, grinding herbs against stone tablets, writing your own formulas by lantern light. Would you trade your powdered pearls for prayer oil, your celadon jars for incense ash? The thought isn't uncomfortable, it's oddly soothing. There's a story, one of your favourites, about a monk who lived near the southern cliffs. Every morning he'd collect dew from lotus leaves and store it in a gourd. When asked why, he replied, "So that even in winter I remember summer's tenderness." He never used it. He just liked knowing it was there. Later, when a noblewoman fell ill with a terrible skin rash, he gave her the dew, mixed with powdered sandalwood and ginseng ash. Within days, her skin cleared. She swore by it for the rest of her life. Claimed it cured not just the rash, but her nightmares. True? Who knows? But it makes you smile. You scan the scroll again and find a line written in smaller, shakier script, clearly added later. Beauty is not brightness, it is balance. To appear as you are, without yearning to be more or less. You whisper it once, then again, letting it settle. A balm in its own right. You fold the scroll, tie it gently with red twine, and place it on your shelf beside your jars. It doesn't clash. It fits. Later that night, just before bed, You prepare one of the simpler recipes, ginseng and dew. You crush the dried root, mix it into your morning's gathered condensation, and press the mixture beneath your eyes. You feel no miracle, but also no yearning, just peace, and perhaps that, in a palace full of pressure and powder, is the rarest radiance of all. The following afternoon is unusually warm, the kind that drapes itself over your shoulders like a damp blanket. You retreat from the sun, stepping into the cool shade of an older annex tucked along the eastern edge of the palace grounds. The walls here are worn, the floorboards creak louder, and the air smells faintly of cedarwood and something stranger. Musky, faintly sour. You wrinkle your nose. Your guide today is not your aunt, not a court friend, not even a servant. It's someone entirely different, an apothecary who smells like burnt herbs and ink-stained fingers. He's short, wiry, with eyebrows that wag more than they arch. You don't catch his name. He doesn't offer it. What he does offer, however, is a small ceramic pot the colour of old ivory. Inside, a dense, slightly glistening cream with a faint green tint. You dip a cautious finger in, and then recoil. It smells alive. "You're lucky," the apothecary says, clearly entertained. It's fresh toad fat from the marsh, filtered through bamboo charcoal, boiled with pine ash, and mixed with wild perilla oil. Very rare, very moisturizing. You're still staring at your finger. "Toad, you ask?" He nods, entirely too proud. "Skin like rice paper by morning." This is the part where you wonder if glowing skin is worth the existential crisis of rubbing amphibian on your face. Historians still argue whether toad fat was genuinely used in Goryeo beauty rituals or merely whispered about in fringe texts and jokes passed between bored court ladies. Some claim it was part of folk remedies, others suggest it was associated with shamanistic rites, used not for glow but for protection. Either way, it exists in the scrolls, scribbled in the margins beside more respectable recipes. You hesitate, then, ever so delicately, dab the tiniest smear onto your jawline. It's surprisingly light. Smooth, almost buttery. Not at all what you'd expect from something harvested off a swamp creature. "See?" the apothecary cackles. "You're glowing already." Well, psychologically anyway. He shuffles to a nearby shelf and begins pulling down more pots. One is labelled bear bile, another boar marrow, and the last, ominously, snake butter. You really don't want to know what that means. He opens each one with the reverence of someone revealing a royal treasure. Not, well, animal grease. "These," he says, "are not your delicate garden creams. These are foundational, deep tissue, courage creams." You raise an eyebrow. "Courage? Of course," he chirps. "It takes courage to smell like this." And you can't argue with that. You're offered another blend, a deep purple salve made from ground beetle shell, crushed red beans, and ox bile. "Fantastic for knees," he says with a wink, "and for frightening away suitors who get too close." You apply none of it, but you thank him anyway. He sits down across from you, crossing his legs with the slow care of someone who's spent too much time bent over bubbling pots. "You know," he says, more softly now, "people laugh at the idea of animal creams. But nature provides what we fear to ask for: protection, warmth, regeneration." You glance down at the faint green sheen still drying on your skin. It doesn't feel dangerous. It feels ancient. Like a memory passed down through bone rather than word. You begin to understand a little. In a world where illness struck without warning and beauty meant survival, the lines between medicine, magic, and moisturizer blurred. If toad fat could prevent wrinkles and ward off evil dreams, why not smear it on? Later, as the sun tilts low in the sky, you leave the annex with a small jar of your own. Not the toad fat, no, you left that as a token of respect, but a milder blend of boar marrow and honeysuckle, which the apothecary promised was the scent of soft memories and unspoken compliments. You tuck it into your sleeve. That night you open the jar again, in your chamber. The scent is rich, surprisingly floral, with a musky edge. You apply it sparingly to your collarbones and the tops of your hands, letting the warmth of your skin coax it into softness. The glow isn't radiant, it's quiet. The kind that doesn't say, "Look at me," but rather, "I remember." And maybe that's the kind of beauty you want to carry tonight. That night, you dream in colours, blush pinks, pale golds, and a whispery lavender that smells like dried plum blossoms in spring. You wake just before dawn, head still filled with petals and song, and the soft scent of something unfamiliar clinging to your collarbone. You smile, remembering the apothecary's blend, boar marrow and honeysuckle. Strange, yes. But it worked. You feel, remembered, as if your skin has been listening to poetry all night. Today the palace is quieter. A festival has drawn much of the court outside the walls into the hills, where music and silk streamers swirl on the breeze. You choose to stay behind. You're not in the mood for loudness, for performance. Not today. Instead, you head toward one of the older wings of the palace, where the perfumers work. The scent greets you before the doorway even opens, plum blossoms, but not fresh. No, this is the essence of plum blossom, captured, distilled, and spun into oil so fine it shimmers like breath on glass. The chamber is long, filled with ceramic jars, copper distillers, and bundles of drying herbs tied up like scrolls. You pass rows of lavender, lemon balm, sandalwood chips, and jasmine buds, all hanging upside down to dry, their scent softening, tea softening with age. And there at the centre table sits a vial the size of your thumb. You reach for it instinctively, uncorking it with care. The moment the scent touches your nose, you're somewhere else. A garden in full bloom. A night so still you can hear the petals fall. A whisper, a promise, a pause in time. The oil is more than fragrant. It's emotional, evocative. Historians still debate whether scents like plum blossom oil were used for romance, ritual, or relaxation. Some scrolls describe them as meditative tools for prayer. Others mention their use in courtship dances and royal seductions. And a few, more obscure, hint at darker uses, perfume oils employed to manipulate memory, sway decisions, or even incite obsession. One emperor was said to be so enchanted by a concubine's custom blend of plum blossom and smoked pine that he halted court proceedings for 3 days, just to compose poetry in her honor. You're not sure you believe that story, but you understand it. You dab a single drop behind your ear. The oil sinks into your skin, warm and light. The scent lingers, not loud, not boastful, just there, like a secret you're keeping from yourself. A woman appears from behind a curtain, a perfumer dressed in ash-coloured robes. Her face is plain, but her presence is commanding. She says nothing, just watches you with a small nod, as if to say, "That one chose you." She gestures to the shelves. You step forward and explore. There's cherry bark oil, spicy and sharp, persimmon seed extract, grounding and a little bitter, osmanthus flowers, sweet enough to make your teeth ache, and then, tucked near the back, something unexpected. A jar labelled only with one character, rain. You unseal it. The scent is difficult to name. Wet stone, bamboo leaves. The softness of regret, it smells like a memory you never lived, but miss all the same. You look to the perfumer. "How do you make this?" She smiles. You don't. You wait. You collect rainwater during the spring's first storm, steep it with dried moss, and store it in a sealed jar for 13 months. Only then does it remember who it is. You nod slowly. Of course it does. There's a story one you once heard whispered in the women's quarters of a woman who wore only plum blossom oil, day and night, for years. She claimed it made her dreams sweeter. After she passed away, her sleeping mat still smelled of blossoms. Even the wood beneath had absorbed it. The scent never faded. The room became sacred, off-limits, not because of who she was, but because of how she had lingered. Scent, you realize, is the most persistent form of memory. You select a few oils, plum blossom, cherry bark, and that elusive rain, and mix them gently with camellia seed oil in a small celadon vial. You seal it with beeswax and wrap it in silk. Later, you'll use it sparingly. A drop at the base of your throat, a trace at your wrists. You'll walk through the palace not to be noticed, but to be felt. A presence, soft and scented, trailing behind you like a forgotten stanza. As you leave the perfumery, the air outside smells empty in comparison. But your skin carries the memory of blossoms, rain, and warmth. You inhale deeply, and you wonder, how many women have been remembered not for what they said or wore, but for how they smelled? How many emperors loved a scent more than the woman who wore it? And how many women, wise and quiet, made that their plan all along? The rain begins in the late afternoon, just a hush at first, a whisper between the tiles, then heavier, more certain, spilling across the rooftops in long, even sheets. You sit by the window, legs tucked beneath your robe, watching as rivulets snake down the courtyard stones, pooling in quiet corners and washing the dust from everything. It's perfect letter-writing weather. A fresh sheet of mulberry paper lies across your lap, its surface smooth and slightly textured like pressed petals. Beside it, a brush, inkstone, and a small bottle of cherry oil, not for sealing, for scent. You dip the brush and begin to write. Not poetry, not court petitions, a letter, a simple one, to someone you've barely spoken to, someone who once lent you a scroll on eyebrow shaping and never asked for it back. Someone whose glance, in passing, has felt more intimate than words. You write slowly, the characters loose and slightly smudged from the damp air. But that's fine. Let the ink bleed. Let the words soften. It's not meant for scholars, it's meant for feeling. And when the last line is done, you fold the paper in thirds and press a fingertip into the cherry oil, dabbing a dot in the center crease. The scent is faint, sweet, slightly bitter, like longing made edible. Historians still argue whether scented letters in Goryeo, Korea were common or purely poetic fantasy. Some records describe women anointing their correspondence with oils as a form of flirtation. Others suggest it was used to identify the sender when names were too dangerous to write. A lingering scent could be as revealing and as risky as a signature. You place the letter in a small box, tuck a sprig of dried plum blossom beside it, and pass it quietly to a servant girl who knows better than to ask questions. She slips away with it tucked beneath her sash. You watch the rain fall and wait. Later, when the sun has retreated and the lanterns have been lit, a folded reply arrives, not a scroll, not a formal letter, just a slip of cloth, soft linen, dabbed with a tiny smear of red at the edge. Lip rouge. Yours? No, this one smells faintly of sandalwood. A message returned in kind. You smile. Lip rouge in the Goryeo court wasn't just cosmetic, it was coded. A smear left on a teacup could say I'm listening. A smudge on a scroll could mean I miss you. A forgotten imprint on a pillowcase, that was either scandal or poetry, depending on who found it. You reach for your own rouge jar made of crushed safflower petals, beeswax, and a bit of cinnamon bark. It's been warming near the lantern, and when you open it, the scent rises like steam. You apply it not with a brush, but with your finger, pressing the colour gently into your lips. Not too much. Just enough to whisper, not to shout. A mirror sits nearby. You check your reflection, cheeks flushed, lips softly red, eyes brighter now than they were this morning. You look like someone who's been spoken to kindly, someone who's been seen. There's a small story carved in the base of your rouge jar, a gift from your aunt. It's faded, barely legible now, but you know what it says. You memorized it as a child. Let no one mistake your softness for silence. And tonight, you don't. The rain continues. You settle back onto your mat with a new sheet of paper and begin again, this time not to him, this time to yourself. A note of thanks, a promise. A memory in the making. You sign it with a kiss, cherry-scented, safflower-stained, and slip it under your pillow just in case tomorrow asks who you really are. The next morning arrives dressed in fog, not the heavy, pressing kind, but something gentler. A hush, wrapped in mist, curling around the tiled eaves and slipping into the folds of your robe like an old friend. You rise before the bells. Something feels different. It's the kind of morning for secrets. You slip from your chamber with nothing more than a small pouch tied at your waist, your steps soft along the stone walkway. You don't head toward the apothecary, not toward the bathhouse, the perfumery, or the herb garden. Instead, you wind your way to the edge of the palace, where the walls sag a little and the guards tend to look the other way. There's a hidden path here, barely worn, cloaked in vines, forgotten by most. You follow it past a thicket of flowering trees through a narrow bamboo arch until the palace sounds fade behind you. And ahead, a small cottage. Roof, mossy. Door half-hinged, smoke curling thinly from a crooked chimney. You knock. The door opens. Inside is a woman, old, not elderly, but old in the way fire is old. She looks you over once, says nothing, and walks away. You follow. The space is cluttered. Bundles of dried herbs hang from the rafters. Bowls of crushed petals and bark rest on uneven shelves. The air is dense with scent, amber, mint, something bitter you can't quite name. She doesn't ask why you've come. She doesn't have to, because this is where women go when they've had enough of powdered restraint and sweet oils. This is where they go for the forbidden flowers, the hidden balms, the recipes that aren't written down, only remembered by hands and scars. She reaches beneath a table and pulls out a small jar sealed with black wax. The seal is cracked, imperfect. Whatever's inside is illegal, or frowned upon, or simply feared. She opens it. The scent is sharp, not unpleasant, but wild. It smells like the edge of the world, like something that bloomed in the dark and didn't ask permission. Night camellia, she says, picked when the flower folds inward, mixed with bruised wormwood, boiled under eclipse light. You blink. Historians still debate whether night rituals like this were real or embroidered gossip whispered among jealous courtiers, but here it is, real enough to sting your eyes. You watch as she dips 2 fingers into the balm, lifts it to your cheek, and smears it gently across your skin. The sensation is immediate, not cold, not hot, awake. Your face tingles like it's just been kissed by wind and lightning. Not a storm, just the prelude. The woman steps back. This is not for looking pretty, she says. It's for being remembered. You nod, because you understand now. These hidden balms weren't about court favor or compliments. They were about power, autonomy, reclaiming something lost in the scrolls and powders and rules. Not everyone was allowed to shine, but anyone could burn if they knew how. You sit with her for hours, helping her grind roots and wrap packets in wax paper. She teaches you how to mix plum bark with wild ginger to create a tonic that reveals what others try to hide. Whether that means blemishes or intentions, she doesn't say. There's a fringe tale she shares about a noblewoman who vanished from court after one too many rumors about her night creams. Some said she poisoned a concubine with rosewater laced in blue poppy. Others claimed she simply walked into the forest and became a shadow. The woman beside you chuckles. She sends me letters sometimes. You don't ask if she's joking. Before you leave, the woman gives you a small jar of balm. No label, no instructions. Just a single pressed flower sealed beneath a layer of wax, a 5-petaled bloom, dark red like dried blood. Use only when necessary, she says. You nod again. And when you step back onto the hidden path, the mist wraps around your ankles like a ribbon. Back at the palace, no one notices your return, except maybe your aunt, who sniffs once, narrows her eyes and says, "You smell older." You smile. That night, you open the jar in the silence of your chamber, just a trace, pressed to the hollows beneath your cheekbones. The scent rises slowly, herbal, iron-tinged with a sweetness that bites. You look into your mirror, and your reflection looks back with new eyes, not softer, but sharper, as if something hidden in you has been called forward, not to glow, but to warn. Not all beauty is meant to be admired. Some is meant to be remembered, and some is meant to be feared. By the next day, the moon is thinning, slipping quietly into her more secretive phase, and your reflection has changed with her. Not dramatically, not something anyone would point at and whisper about, but you notice a sharpness in the cheekbones, a kind of hush behind the eyes, a new way you carry your chin, less seeking approval, more seeking answers, and answers, as it turns out, are carved into clay. You are summoned to one of the oldest archive rooms in the palace, not for punishment, though for a second your heart does stutter. Instead, your aunt merely says, "They've found something. You should see it." The room is dark, the walls stacked with scrolls and boxes sealed with twine so dry it snaps when touched. But what draws your eye is the table in the centre. Upon it, a slate-coloured tablet, flat, curved at one edge like a broken smile, covered in tight, etched script. Not Hangul, not modern Hangul either. Hanja, the Chinese characters once used in Korean record-keeping, painstakingly carved by someone who clearly had both a message and a flair for drama. Next to it, a transcription rests, new ink on fresh parchment. The title, the painted face, Rituals of Preparation. You scan the lines. It's a makeup tutorial, not in the way you'd expect. No perky tone, no friendly brush recommendations, just direct instructions etched in bone-cold prose. Begin with oil of rice and ash of white willow. Press across the skin in wide strokes, left to right, never upward. To raise what falls is to lie. You pause, and that's not skincare advice, that's philosophy. The tablet continues with strange, mesmerizing detail. For brows, burn pine needles, mix with ink, and trace carefully. Brows should neither arch nor frown. They should rest like gates, half open. Rouge is for memory. Safflower stirred with wine, dabbed upon the lips with breath held. To speak afterward is to curse the spell. You look up. Across the table, a court scribe watches you closely. "This came from a burial mound," she says quietly. "Wrapped in silk, hidden beneath 3 jars of jade powder. No names, just this." "Who wrote it?" "No one knows. Some say a retired court mistress, others say a monk." You think of the balm you still have tucked away, the one sealed with the red flower. And now this, a make-up guide written not as instruction, but incantation. Historians still argue whether these clay tutorials were genuine records or simply symbolic offerings for the dead. Did they intend to teach? Or to preserve ritual for the afterlife? Either way, it's clear, beauty here wasn't about attraction, it was about intention. The tutorial ends not with a summary, but a warning. Never paint while bitter. The skin remembers, and bitterness stains deeper than rouge. You shiver, and not from the cold. You trace the characters once more, then gather your things. Before you leave, you copy one line onto a small slip of paper and tuck it into your sash. Let the face be your letter, let the powder be your punctuation. Back in your chamber, you try it. You set aside your usual jars and instead prepare a mixture like the one described. Ash of white willow, oil of pressed rice, a touch of powdered jade. You heat it over a lamp, let it cool, and press it gently across your cheeks in long, deliberate strokes, left to right, never upward. It feels more like calligraphy than skincare. You don't check your reflection, not yet. You take a pine sprig from the incense shelf, burn it slightly, and mix the soot with ink, just as the tablet says. With the tip of a brush you shape your brows, not arched, not frowning, but half-open gates. You press safflower rouge to your lips, and you hold your breath, and in the silence that follows you feel something inside you settle, something heavy, ancient, a kind of remembering that has nothing to do with facts or names, but everything to do with gesture. You look at your reflection now, not to admire, but to understand. And it's not a pretty face you see, it's a spoken one, a letter written without apology. A poem carved into clay, and perhaps, just perhaps, a spell. The sky blushes gold as you walk through the lower halls, the morning light slanting in sideways, catching motes of dust like falling stars. Today the palace is buzzing, not with gossip, not with scandal, but with the arrival of something rare. Merchants have arrived from the west. Their caravan, wrapped in sun-bleached cloth and camel hide, is parked just outside the main gates. Guards hover close, half wary, half dazzled by the scent of foreign spices and silks. Everyone talks about the lacquered boxes, the jars sealed with wax stamped in strange characters, the pouches that smell like heat and cinnamon and salt water. You don't mean to be curious. But curiosity is what brought you to moonlight-sifted jade powder and deer milk balm. So you go. The lead merchant is thin, dressed in layers of linen and red wool. His voice is deep, thick, with an accent you can't place. But he bows with grace, and when you ask what he's brought for the Queen's household, he grins. Saffron, he says, myrrh, crushed lapis, ground pearls, clove oil, and, he opens a small chest, a powder made from gold, very fine. Gold, you blink! Historians still debate just how much of these ingredients truly filtered into Goryeo beauty culture. Some believe they were ceremonial, too expensive for regular use. Others claim they were diluted and rebranded by local apothecaries to stretch the supply. Royal saffron, turning out to be marigold. Myrrh, a mix of pine resin, and soot. The truth probably lies, as always, somewhere between fantasy and frugality. But standing here, you see the raw ingredients. Not diluted, not disguised. Real. You hold out your hand, and the merchant spoons a pinch of crushed pearl into your palm. It glitters, less like light, more like memory. Soft, iridescent. It reminds you of the moonlit jade balm, but this glows cooler, like frost in early dawn. Try it, he says. You press it gently onto your cheekbone. It melts in. No shimmer, no residue, just light trapped in your skin. Another jar holds a sticky paste that smells like sandalwood and burnt citrus. Egyptian kohl, the merchant explains. For the eyes, protects against wind, also makes you unforgettable. You laugh. So does a good insult. He winks. You trade a small scroll of safflower rouge formulas for 3 ingredients. A vial of clove oil, a pouch of ground lapis lazuli, and a jar of pale saffron powder, so fine it slips through your fingers like breath. You carry them back to your quarters, wrapped in silk, carefully, reverently. You spend the afternoon experimenting. First, you blend the lapis with rice water and a touch of indigo root. The result? A soft blue cream that cools the skin and leaves the faintest tint on your eyelids. It's daring, but beautiful. A colour that says, I've seen the sky from a mountain you'll never climb. Then the clove oil, strong, almost spicy. You dilute it with sesame oil and dab a trace onto your pulse points. The scent lingers, complex, confident, like warmth wrapped in secrets. Finally, the saffron. You mix it with powdered rice and a drop of lotus nectar. It turns golden, like sunlight crushed into paste. You smooth it across your forehead, then down your throat. The glow is soft, subtle, not shine luminance. You glance at your reflection in the bronze mirror, and for the first time you look foreign, not in a displaced way, in a legendary way, as though you walked out of a tapestry instead of into one. There's a story told in hushed tones about a queen who received a jar of crushed emeralds from a Persian trader. She used it only once, on the day of her greatest betrayal. They say she wanted to look like something no one could touch, something not beautiful, but impossible. You think about her as you pack away your new ingredients, about how she must have felt, glimmering and unreadable, about how the line between elegance and armour is sometimes made of gold dust and good posture. Later, as the moon returns, slender, new, shy, you dab a touch of saffron cream onto your collarbone and blend the lapis tint onto your lids. You don't need it. But tonight, you want to feel rare. And when the oil lamp flickers low, you imagine the caravan again, fading into the dark, leaving behind nothing but a whisper of spice and starlight, and the memory of how, for one golden afternoon, you wore the road itself. The next day begins not with light, but with parchment, a new edict delivered at dawn. You're still brushing the tangles from your hair when the paper is unfurled before you. The court is issuing appearance guidelines again. This time the rules are longer, more specific, more ridiculous. You skim the contents with one eyebrow raised. Only unmarried noblewomen may use peony rouge. Camellia oil must not be applied beyond the neckline. Eyebrow shapes are now categorized by rank. Moon curve for court ladies, willow bend for scholars' daughters, phoenix wing reserved solely for royals. You sigh. Powder and paint have become paperwork. Your aunt, reading over your shoulder, makes a sound somewhere between a snort and a groan. Next they'll assign lip colors by zodiac sign. You laugh, quietly, because beneath the humor there's something colder, heavier. A truth you've always known but rarely named. Beauty is no longer ritual. It's bureaucracy. Historians still argue whether these cosmetic restrictions were truly enforced or just performative power plays. But the scrolls don't lie. Decrees were issued, confiscations happened, and in one case a merchant was exiled for selling married woman's rouge to a widow under 30. Of course, rules didn't stop the innovation. They just changed the game. You reach for your makeup chest. Gone are the old familiar jars. In their place, new blends, coded colors, whispered formulas developed to look compliant but feel rebellious. The pink rouge you use now, safflower mixed with crushed beet, toned down with chalk to resemble peony. Your eyebrow tint. Burned bamboo ash ground into walnut oil, light enough to pass for moon curve, but shaped to speak your truth. You sit before the mirror, brush in hand, and think. Let them make rules. I'll write footnotes. The rules affect men too, though in quieter ways. In the scholar quarters, powdered cheeks and polished brows are becoming common. Not for vanity, for symbolism. A smooth face is seen as the sign of a clear mind. Unblemished skin reflects moral clarity. And so the men apply rice powder before reciting Confucian classics. They line their eyes just faintly, not for seduction, but to appear more vigilant. Awake. You catch a glimpse of one such scholar on your walk to the archives. His cheeks are pale, his lips faintly tinted. He pretends not to notice you, but he straightens his spine as you pass. And yes, his eyebrow arch is suspiciously perfect. Back in your room, you unwrap a folded cloth. Inside, a letter written in invisible ink, revealed only when warmed over a flame. It's from your friend in the village. The one who makes barley paste in the bathhouse and once convinced a court lady that goat milk was phoenix tears. Her message is short. They can regulate powder, they can't regulate glow. You smile, because she's right. That night, you mix a cream not listed in any scroll. Ginseng, rosewater, and a pinch of turmeric smuggled in with the spices from the Western caravan. The scent is warm, slightly peppery, the texture cloud-like. You apply it across your face in sweeping strokes, not from left to right, not downward, just as you feel. Then with a clean brush you paint your lips with rouge, not peony, not beet, something new, something mixed from hibiscus petals soaked in rice wine. No one has assigned this color, no one has ranked it, it belongs to you. You lean into the mirror. You don't look disobedient, you look free. And that in a palace where even the angle of a brow must be filed under appropriate is a quiet rebellion, one that glows. By the time the leaves begin to shift, blushing at the edges, whispering of autumn, you start to notice a change not just in the trees but in the glances, the quiet ones, the sideways ones, the way people look at your cheekbones before they look at your eyes, the way the older court ladies lean in slightly, squinting at your skin, trying to decode something they can't quite name. Because your face says things now, things the court doesn't know how to file. You've mastered the art of compliance, with a twist. Your powders fall within regulation, but your glow doesn't. You don't shimmer, you haunt. You don't flush, you pulse. It's not paint on your face. It's something happening behind your skin. And that has people talking. The palace begins to hum with quiet questions. What balm is she using? Whose formulas does she follow? Is it imported? Is it divine? Is it dangerous? Your aunt laughs one evening as she pours tea. They've started calling you the girl with the ghost glow. You sip without blinking. Then maybe they should stop trying to see me in daylight. Because you know the truth. The glow doesn't come from products, it comes from refusal, from choosing how, when, and why to glow at all. But with beauty comes visibility, and with visibility comes inquiry. Soon you're summoned, not to the Queen, not to the apothecary, but to the Office of Women's Conduct. A room filled with scrolls and thin-lipped women who smell like soap and suspicion. You kneel, bow, keep your gaze low. They ask questions. Do you mix your own creams? Where do you obtain your rouge? Has anyone instructed you in unauthorized formulations? Your answers are calm, vague, perfectly polite. I only use what the palace provides. My aunt taught me what her mother taught her. I've never sought ingredients outside the capital. All technically true, none entirely honest. Historians still argue whether these inquests were routine checks or targeted crackdowns on quiet defiance. Either way, they rarely ended in exile, but they almost always ended in compliance or silence. But you're not silenced, you're studied, because the officials can't quite accuse you. Your face is too pure, your records too clean, your powders all fall within the approved spectrum. And yet, you shimmer like a poem they didn't authorize. They let you go, but with a warning, glow humbly. That night, you sit before your mirror and whisper the phrase aloud, once, twice. Then you open your drawer of banned balms and secret powders and glow with intent. Your reflection doesn't smile. It gleams, and it doesn't ask for permission. Later, you hear whispers from the servants' wing, girls trading your old formulations in secret. Your barley paste balm, your hibiscus rouge, even your lapis-tinted cream has found a new audience. You don't stop them. You write notes in the margins of their scrolls. You'll need more oil in winter. Add a pinch of mint, trust me. Glow humbly, glow wisely instead. You're no longer just using beauty. You're shaping it, turning it into language, into armor, into a kind of soft, scented rebellion that the palace can't quite punish because they can't prove where your glow comes from. And even if they could, they wouldn't understand. The wind has shifted. There's a crispness to the air now, the kind that carries long-forgotten voices and rustles the curtains when no one is near. Leaves skitter across the courtyard like they're chasing secrets, and the moon, when it rises, seems paler, more watchful. You wake one night to the sound of knocking, not at your door, at your window. Soft, rhythmic, too careful to be the wind. You rise, heart ticking faster than your feet. You slide open the paper screen and find no one there, only a folded cloth resting on the sill. You bring it inside, fingers trembling, and unroll it slowly. A jar, small, round, old, its lid sealed with wax and stamped with a symbol you've only seen in ghost stories, a crescent moon with a slash through the center, a charm against spirits or an invitation. You don't remember falling asleep, but you wake with the jar still in your hands. And you know what it is, the ghost balm, a cream whispered about in folktales and midwife gossip, a blend of lotus sap, crushed ashes of burnt prayers, and oil from seeds left to ferment in moonlight, said to protect the wearer from restless spirits, or, depending on who you ask, attract them. Historians still argue whether these balms were legitimate ritual items or just a clever excuse to rub strange things on your skin and blame the consequences on ghosts. But the stories persist. You've heard them. Of women who glowed too brightly and dreamt of strangers standing at their beds. Of noblemen who swore they could smell the balm long after a woman had passed. Of a temple maiden whose beauty became unbearable after she wore it. So radiant, the monks covered every mirror in her chamber. You place the jar on your table and stare. You should throw it away. You should burn it, bury it, forget it. But curiosity, your oldest vice, wins again. You break the wax. The scent rises immediately. Not floral, not herbal. Just other. Cool, sweet, faintly metallic. It smells like rain on ashes, like ink spilled on silk, like breath held in grief. You dip one finger in, just enough to test. You press it beneath your collarbone. The skin doesn't tingle, it tightens, the way a room does when someone walks in who isn't supposed to. The air changes, and you feel it. Not fear, not yet, but presence. The room no longer feels like yours alone. You light a lamp. The flame flickers once, twice, then steadies. You exhale. Somewhere outside an owl calls, and from the hallway you hear the faintest sound of something moving. Footsteps too slow, too careful. You don't move. You sit at your table, shoulders squared, eyes wide open, and wait. The presence never speaks, never shows itself, but it stays, lurking in the corners, curling beneath the windowsill, peering through the ink of the calligraphy on your wall. You sleep uneasily, but in the morning, your skin is flawless, lawless. Even your aunt notices. She tilts her head, studies you. You look, you nod. Haunted? No, she says. Balanced? But like you've seen something I haven't. You say nothing. Later that day, you return to the jar. The balm has settled, thickened slightly like it remembers the night. You decide not to wear it again. Not yet. But you don't throw it away either, because that glow, that whisper at the edge of your reflection, that feeling of being seen from the other side, you're not sure it was a warning. It might have been recognition. And you wonder, just briefly, how many women before you reached for that same jar? How many pressed it to their skin not to be beautiful, but to be noticed by something that sees beyond powder and pearls? You tuck the jar away, wrapped tightly in silk, hidden beneath your pillow. Not gone. Just waiting, because beauty in Goryeo wasn't just for the living. Sometimes it was for those who refused to leave. The days that follow feel lighter, as if someone has been acknowledged and in turn has loosened their grip. Your dreams return to quieter places, riverbanks, warm hands, the soft hum of a string instrument played by no one in particular. But the balm remains beneath your pillow. You don't touch it. Still, you carry the echo of its glow, a kind of hush behind the eyes, a depth in the skin that no powder can recreate. And then one evening, as you walk the garden path between the lantern-lit trees, a whisper follows you. Are you the one with the ghost cream? You turn. It's a girl, young, barely old enough to tie her own sash properly. But her eyes are wide with belief. Not awe, not suspicion, just hope. You nod, slowly. She wrings her hands. My mother used to speak of it, said it kept her safe when the palace wasn't, said it made her dreams hers again. You remember a phrase from the scrolls. Some creams heal wounds, others guard doors. The girl's gaze is steady now. Could you show me, just once? And something in you answers, not as teacher, not as guardian, but as witness, because you are no longer just someone who uses balm, you are someone who carries it. You nod again. Back in your chamber, you unseal the silk wrapping. The jar looks the same, but the scent is softer now, as if it, too, remembers. The girl sits quietly, watching every movement as you scoop the faintest trace and press it gently to the hollow of her neck. There, you whisper, that's enough. She closes her eyes. You sit beside her, saying nothing. Later, she leaves without a word, but her steps sound different now, firmer somehow. That night, you reflect on how many ingredients you've touched over the seasons, the ginseng, the deer milk, the barley, the toad fat. You remember the saffron paste that made your skin glow like candlelight, the barley scrubs of the village, the lapis lazuli creams of the caravan, and the ghost balm, which isn't just about ghosts, It's about staying in the body, in the mind, in the space that people try to pull you out of with rules and titles and narrowed eyes. You open a new jar, this one is yours. You mix it slowly, a base of fermented rice cream, crushed wild mint, a touch of lotus ash, a drop of clove oil from the western pouch. One breath held, one exhale. You add the last ingredient without hesitation, a single eyelash fallen onto your dressing table at dusk. Yours. It's symbolic, but so is everything. You press the balm into a new celadon jar, no label, just a pressed plum blossom laid gently across the surface. Tomorrow, someone will ask you for it, and you will choose to share. Because the balm isn't the secret anymore. You are. The knowledge, the patience, the refusal to let beauty be owned by bureaucracy or whispered rules. You've gathered the herbs, read the scrolls, faced the ghosts. Now you carry the glow with you, not on your skin, but behind your gaze, in the calm of your hands, in the way your footsteps make even the palace hold its breath. And when you sit by the mirror tonight, you see not a girl who followed 1,000 recipes, but a woman who became her own. No need for rouge tonight, no powder, just balm and memory, and the quiet, unmistakable light of someone who glows from the inside. You wake before the light again, though now it feels less like routine and more like instinct. The morning is mist-heavy, almost theatrical in its softness, as if the world wants you to move slowly, to steep, not stir. You wrap yourself in a thicker robe, padding softly through the quiet halls until you reach the small eastern gate. It's barely used, and you like it that way. It opens not into a courtyard or garden, but onto a narrow path that curves sharply along the inner wall and eventually tapers off toward the outer markets. You're not going that far today. You stop just beyond the kitchen quarters, where a makeshift tent has been raised, patchwork and tattered. Inside, a man with a travelling trunk, a strange accent, and a reputation for two things: healing heartbreak and curing acne, with the same paste. You've heard whispers. He's a healer, an apothecary, a bit of a mystic, and possibly a fraud. Perfect. He invites you in without looking up, just gestures toward a stool, motions for your hands. You oblige. He studies your palms, tracing the lines with fingers stained the colour of rust. You've seen sorrow, he murmurs, but you didn't let it stay. You offer a half smile. What does that have to do with skin? He looks up. Everything. From his trunk, he pulls out a pouch of crushed lotus seed. For calming. Then a bowl of fermented rice lees, what's left after making wine. For brightening. And finally, a paste so dark it looks like night itself. For the parts of the face that feel heavy. He mixes them together without measuring, then adds something that smells faintly of old tea and lemon peels. He hands you the bowl. You'll apply this under the jaw, behind the ears, inner wrists. Not for glow, for letting go. You don't question it. You do exactly as instructed. The balm is cool and gritty, like memory ground down to its simplest form. You press it gently into your skin, and for a moment, just a flicker, you feel the weight you've been carrying tilt. Not fall, not vanish, just shift. And that is enough. He doesn't ask for payment, only nods. Tell the others I'm leaving by first snow. You nod back, not sure who the others are, but you'll tell them anyway. Later, back in your quarters, the scent of fermented lotus still clings to your skin, warm and faintly sweet. You light a lamp and prepare your face for the evening, not with new creams, but with a strange sense of unburdening. As if the glow tonight isn't just surface, it's relief. And it shows. Even your mirror seems kinder. You remember a line from one of the temple scrolls. The skin reflects not just the sun, but what we carry beneath it. You think of how many women have come before you, wearing their grief like rouge, their silence like highlighter, their hope tucked behind the ears where secrets hide best. You think of the healer's paste, of how it didn't promise beauty, only space. And somehow, That made you feel beautiful. Later, a servant girl knocks on your door. She stammers, then asks if you have anything at all for a friend whose face won't stop burning after a tearful night. You hand her a pouch of lotus and rice with a drop of clove oil. Behind the ears, you say, and maybe leave the mirror alone for a day. She bows deeply, leaves with the same care she arrived with. You stand in the silence, holding your own reflection gently. Tonight, there's no ghost cream, no rouge, no powder, just balm and breath, and skin that remembers how to feel. The sky bruises early now, purple by late afternoon, navy by dinner, black by the time the second bell echoes across the palace walls. You sit beneath your lantern, its glow amber and low, a scroll unrolled across your lap. But you're not reading, not really, you're thinking about cheeks. Specifically, how some people believe they predict your entire life. There's a practice, rare, often mocked, but always whispered about, that claims the face is a map, that lines, shadows, tones, even the temperature of your cheeks can reveal destiny. It's called physiognomy, and in certain corners of the palace, it's been treated with a seriousness that borders on obsession. You once heard a courtier refuse a marriage proposal after a healer noted that the man's left eyebrow arched too aggressively. Another woman spent a year applying rice powder only to the right side of her face because she'd been told it was her fortunate half. Today, you've been summoned to a session you don't say no because curiosity always wins. The physiognomist is older than the mirrors in your chamber, but her eyes are sharp, her touch feather-light. She doesn't speak at first, just circles you, observes, then she lifts a small bronze disc, your reflection staring back at you, warped slightly as if hesitant. Your skin is warm, she says, but not angry, that's rare. You nod slowly, she touches your chin. Firm, unapologetic. Your jaw twitches. She traces one finger beneath your right eye. There, she whispers. That's where your path split. You don't know what she means, but you feel it anyway. She moves to your cheeks. This is where your fate rests, she says, pressing lightly. And yours is, conflicted. You raise a brow. You don't want what most women here want. That's not a reading. That's a confirmation. She mixes a tiny jar of balm, something neutral, faintly scented with fig and sandalwood, and dabs it high on your cheekbones. This will not change your fate, she says, but it will make it easier to see. You leave the chamber more puzzled than illuminated. Back in your room, you stare at your reflection, and one ion and wonder. If someone had read your face years ago, would they have seen this moment coming? This confidence? This quiet refusal to glow on anyone's schedule but your own? Historians still debate whether physiognomy was serious science or aesthetic superstition. Some records show emperors consulting face readers before choosing advisors. Others suggest it was simply another way to judge a woman's worth without asking her to speak. You sit with the balm still soft on your skin and think, what if your cheeks aren't a map? What if they're a canvas and you are the brush? The next morning, the girl who visited you before, the one you gave the cherry oil letter to, returns. She asks, cautiously, "Do you believe the shape of a face tells your story?" You smile. "Only if someone else is writing it?" She nods slowly, then pulls from her sleeve a folded pouch. Inside, a blend she made herself. "For cheekbones," she says, "but only the ones that look forward." You test it. It's too oily, the ratio's off, the scent leans sharp, but the intention, that's perfect. And so you show her how to fix it, how to blend in just a touch of bean powder, to thicken it, how to mellow the scent with a drop of honeyed rose. When she leaves, her shoulders are straighter. You stand in front of the mirror again. This time, you take the bronze disc with you, not to see your future, but to appreciate the warp. Your cheeks glow, not with fortune, but with choice. And that, you decide, is the only destiny that matters. The palace has entered its blue period, not in sadness, though the hush in the air could fool you, but in light. Everything is tinged with it. The lanterns burn cooler, the shadows lengthen earlier, and even the moon seems to linger in shades of cobalt and ash. You wake with a sense of weight, not heaviness exactly, but depth. It's the perfect morning for ritual cleansing, not the dainty kind with floral mists and warmed towels. No, today you want something elemental. You slip into a simpler robe, tie your hair back with a cloth, and walk toward the temple gardens, just beyond the kitchen wing. Most women skip this path. It's quiet, little overgrown, more moss than stone, but that's exactly why you come. A stone basin waits beneath a twisted pine tree. Rainwater has collected in its belly, clear and cold. Beside it, wrapped in linen, is a bundle of herbs you placed there the night before. Dried lotus petals, crushed bamboo leaves, a slice of cucumber skin, and 2 sprigs of fresh mint. You unwrap the bundle and drop it into the basin. The scent rises, green, cool, sweet in a way that doesn't beg for attention. You scoop the water with your hands and splash it onto your face. It shocks you awake, but not harshly. The kind of awake that feels earned. This isn't about glow, it's about returning. Ritual cleansing in Goryeo wasn't just hygiene, it was restoration. Some scrolls describe royal women rinsing in dew collected from lotus leaves, believing it carried the essence of purity. Others bathed only beneath full moons, insisting the light helped pull sorrow from the skin. Historians still debate whether these moonlit rituals were spiritual cleansing or coded therapy. But one thing's clear, beauty in this world was deeply tied to water, not just as a cleanser, but as a messenger. You finish rinsing, then pat your face dry with a cloth embroidered with the character for stillness. You sit beside the basin for a while, letting the breeze dry the remaining drops. The air smells different now, like you've shed something invisible. Back in your room, you prepare your second ritual, what your aunt once called moonlight bathing. Not a bath, technically, a meditation. You open the window wide, letting the early moonlight pour across the floor. You sit in it, breathe it in, let it land on your skin like silence. This practice, whispered through generations, was believed to balance complexion and spirit. Not everyone understood it. Some mocked it, called it lazy, indulgent. But those who felt it never stopped. Tonight, you feel it. The moonlight doesn't warm your skin, it soothes it, as though every beam carries a tiny apology from the sky. Here, let me ease that for you. You apply a simple balm, rice milk and camellia oil, nothing more. The glow is subtle, almost undetectable, but it grounds you like a weightless cloak that holds your name. There's a tale of a court dancer who would only perform after moonlight bathing. They said her skin gleamed so gently, it calmed the entire court. Even the emperor stopped speaking. Some believed she used pearl powder. Others claimed she whispered prayers over her balm. But those who knew her best said it was the stillness that made her glow. And you believe that. Because tonight you're still. No court mandates, no elixirs. No questions about your cheekbones or lineage or destiny. Just breath, water, moonlight. You close your eyes and let it fill the room, not to change you, but to remind you of who you are beneath all the powders and petals. Just a face, a breath, a woman glowing quietly in the dark. You wake to a hush even deeper than silence, the kind that makes the air feel thick, the kind that suggests something has shifted in the palace overnight, just slightly. Not enough for alarm, but enough for everyone to walk softer. You dress with care, fingers lingering on the fabric ties. You feel something coming, not ominous, just unfamiliar. By midday, it arrives, not with a scream, but with a blister. A court lady, young, clever, quick to copy everyone else's creams, has been carried into the physician's wing with cheeks like fire, raw, swollen, streaked with something angry. You hear about it from a servant, then from your aunt, then from a girl who passes by your window, eyes wide with caution, and then you're summoned, because it was your cream. Not your current one. Not the balm you made last week, or the flower-sealed jar hidden beneath your pillow. An older recipe. One you gave away months ago. One she must have copied, tweaked, and misused. You find her lying on a woven mat in the shade. Her skin glows with fever, her hands tremble, but her voice is clear. "I used too much mint," she says, before anyone asks. The healer shrugs. "And mixed it with sulphur powder. No one told her not to." You sit beside her and press a cool cloth to her brow. "It wasn't made to be used that way." "I know," she whispers. I wanted to look how you look." The words sting more than they flatter, because they carry weight, responsibility. You realize, slowly, that what began as quiet ritual, balm in the dark, powder between friends, has become something else. A blueprint, a source of mimicry, imitation, ambition, and risk. Historians still argue whether beauty accidents like this were isolated events or part of a larger pattern. Recipes misread, ingredients mismeasured. There are scrolls that document cases of rash, blistering, swelling. Some even speak of deeper consequences, accusations of witchcraft when a woman's glow looked too unnatural. You stay with the girl until her fever drops. You leave her a jar of barley gel and willow bark, soothing and simple, and then you go to your chamber to clean house. You pull open every drawer, unseal every jar, check every pouch and powder. You rewrite every label, marking dosage and danger, and not to be used with sulphur. You burn 2 formulas that never quite worked right anyway. Because beauty is not just glow, it is risk. And you no longer live in the illusion that your balms only touch your skin. Later in the courtyard, your aunt joins you under the shade of the pear trees. She sits without asking, then slides a wrapped bundle toward you. "Old scrolls," she says. "Warnings, not recipes." You open them slowly. There are notes about allergic reactions, about overuse. One mentions a woman who applied too much pearl powder and lost all sensation in her cheeks. Another tells of a village girl who believed bathing in vinegar would make her untouchably bright. It did. For 3 days. Then her skin cracked like clay in drought. You spend the evening copying the important parts. Not for yourself, but for others. You post one outside your door. Another at the bathhouse. A third by the garden path. Do not add more to be more. A glow earned, slowly, lasts longest. Some balms are meant to be forgotten. You hear nothing. No thanks, no praise, but that's fine. This glow you carry now is steadier, wiser, a little sadder maybe, but it doesn't flicker, it holds. And as night rises soft and slow, you take one last jar from your shelf. A blend of mugwort and wild rice, gentle and plain. You apply it carefully, like a whisper, like a promise, that tomorrow you will still glow, but only in ways that heal. The palace is quieter after the incident. Not somber, just slower, as if the walls themselves are considering what's been said, what's been worn, and what should never be mixed with sulphur powder again. You feel it in the way the servants walk, heels lifted just slightly, conversations held in soft pockets of breath. Even the breeze that moves through the paper halls seems more deliberate, less assuming. That's when you find it. A scroll, thin, fragile, hidden beneath a stack of inventories in the corner of the storeroom no one ever enters unless they're desperate for ginger or too many beeswax candles. It's wrapped in faded silk and sealed not with wax, but with a pressed thumbprint, faint, dust-coloured, long faded into the fibres. You unroll it carefully, expecting recipes. Instead, you find something rarer, confession. This scroll wasn't meant for court, it wasn't meant for history. It's a beauty manual, yes, but one written by a rogue. A former palace physician, perhaps, maybe even a banished mistress. The handwriting is fast, uneven, almost breathless. It looks like it was written late at night by someone pacing as they composed. The title reads, "What I Was Not Allowed to Know," And then they told me not to mix dried fig with boiled rosemary, so I did. It worked. They told me to wait a year before fermenting persimmon oil. I waited 3 days. It burned slightly. But the glow, gods, the glow. They told me not to write this down. You sit, scroll unrolled across your lap like a secret unfolding. It contains 32 recipes. Most of them read like experiments performed in the half-light. Wild mint boiled in bone broth, strained through silk. Black sesame ash mixed with red clay, applied only during eclipses. Face steam made from chrysanthemum petals and bitter orange peel. At the bottom of each entry, scribbled in the margins, are brief notes. Success. Too strong. Tested on myself. Cried after this one. This isn't a beauty guide. It's a diary of someone trying, failing, learning, glowing in secret. Historians rarely mention these kinds of texts. Too personal, too emotional, too uncontrolled. But you realize this is what has always been missing from the official scrolls, the heart of the craft, not rules, not recipes polished into perfection, but doubt and persistence, and sometimes grief. You spend the rest of the day transcribing the cleanest entries into your own notebook, adapting them as needed. You skip the one with bone broth. You pause long over one that uses dried ginkgo and honey, annotated with, "Made my reflection smile back for the first time in a year." You try that one first. The balm is sticky, faintly nutty, with a trace of sweetness that settles just behind the ears. You apply it slowly, watching your face for signs, not of beauty, but of recognition. And sure enough, your reflection shifts. Not in shape, but in mood. Like you've remembered a joke you used to tell yourself. A version of you that once glowed for no one. That evening, you leave a copy of one recipe near the herb garden. Steep wild ginkgo in honey under a waning moon. Apply only after you've forgiven yourself. You sign it with nothing but a fingerprint. The next morning, it's gone. No one says anything, but someone else leaves behind a sachet of dried ginkgo petals tied with rose thread. A quiet thank you. And suddenly you realize something. These aren't just balms anymore. They're conversations, passed in margins, folded in cloth, whispered beneath blush and balm, women trading reminders, remedies, memories. Not to glow for others, but to glow for themselves. You think again of the scroll's first line. They told me not to know. And now here you are, knowing, glowing, and passing it on. The seasons shift quietly this time. One day, the air tastes of ripe persimmons and wood smoke, and the next, it carries a sharper chill, the kind that sneaks beneath your sleeves and lingers behind your ears, the kind that tells your skin it must start bracing itself, tightening, protecting, preparing. You begin adjusting your routines, as women have done for centuries, not because scrolls tell you to, but because your face feels it. You warm your balms longer. You thicken your creams with sesame oil. You begin adding a drop of honey to nearly everything. But this season brings more than dry winds and colder light. It brings visitors. The eunuchs start knocking more often, not with gossip, not with food trays, but with requests, polite, careful ones. Curiosity framed as concern. Could you share what you're using on the Queen's niece's cheeks? Her Majesty wishes to know the source of your lip tint. Is it true you've been consulted by both the temple and the garden court within the same week? You don't answer right away, because the truth is, they already know, they've always known. Your jars have been disappearing from your shelves in the night, not stolen, borrowed. You find the traces, lid slightly ajar, brushes not quite where you left them, silk coverings folded the wrong way. And you've let them. Because the real power wasn't in keeping the balm, it was in deciding who learned how to use it. So when they ask officially, you answer not with recipes, but with stories. You tell them about the barley paste used in the village, the one that didn't brighten so much as soften. You speak of the monk's lotus dew that calmed sorrow more than it cured blemishes. You tell the story of the apothecary's paste, that smelled like burnt tea and stitched people's confidence back together. You offer these not in scrolls but in conversation. You become what no one saw coming, a keeper of beauty wisdom, not a merchant, not a mistress, not even a royal favourite. A quiet force in silk sleeves who knows the difference between a face that glows and a face that leads. You begin keeping a second notebook, not for yourself, for the ones who knock softly. You title it Glowcraft, Notes for Those Who Dare to Learn. It includes recipes, yes, but also observations. How a cream applied while laughing settles better into the skin. That balm stored near fire feels bolder on the face than balm cooled in shadows. That a face left bare beneath full moonlight often needs nothing else at all. And at the end of each entry, a line like a proverb. No cream works harder than the belief behind it. A mirror is only honest if you let it be. Glow is not an accident. It's a conversation you choose to answer. Soon you find the notebook has companions. Slips of paper tucked under your mat. Sachets of rare herbs left on your windowsill. A pressed flower folded into the hem of your sash. Women are writing back. You've started something, not a rebellion. Not exactly, but a network. A quiet threading of thoughts passed from face to face, not through pigment, but practice. You don't see yourself in the mirror the same way anymore, not as a face to be improved, but as a surface upon which knowledge rests, gently, purposefully, and on the nights when the wind sharpens and the cold sinks deeper, and your hands ache from stirring balm too long, you touch your cheeks and remind yourself, you were never just mixing creams, you were shaping inheritance. Word spreads like steam from a warm bowl. They don't say your name, but they say hers. The emperor's concubine. The one whose glow arrived before she entered a room. The one whose skin, so soft, so luminous, was blamed for a poet's exile, a musician's silence, a minister's sudden divorce. You've seen her only once, from across a long corridor, beneath a silken arch, at the edge of a formal gathering where laughter felt sharp and the fruit tasted expensive. She never looked in your direction, but you felt it, her glow, not warm, not inviting, but precise, tactical, and now she wants to meet. The message arrives as a folded lotus petal, tied with black thread. You unwrap it with steady hands, a single word inked in rose pigment. Tonight. You dress carefully, not richly, not plainly, just intentionally. No rouge, no shimmer. Only a quiet, cooling balm made from milk thistle and camellia, your newest blend. It leaves a trace of softness but no scent. It says nothing, and in a place like this, that says everything. Her chambers are nothing like yours. Dark, quiet, cool, like a cave carved into silk. She sits beside a lacquered table scattered with dried flowers and long strands of black hair braided into loops. No mirrors, only water in a shallow bowl. She gestures for you to sit. You do, no words at first. Then, in a voice like velvet worn thin, I heard you make things that last. It's not a question. You nod. She slides a small jar across the table. The lid is cracked. The balm inside has turned. She says, "This one used to make me unforgettable." You dip your finger in. Sniff. Ginger, violet, something fermented too long. You nod again. "It's rotted. The ratio's off." She smiles, not kindly, but with recognition. "I used it the night I was summoned," she says. "The night he saw only me." You say nothing, because this isn't about balm, it's about memory. She looks at her reflection in the water, blurred, trembling. "I haven't looked like that in months." You reach for your satchel, pull out a small jar. Your quietest blend, mugwort, fig root, a touch of snow tea. "This won't make you unforgettable," you say. She looks up sharply. "But it might make you remember yourself." Her eyes narrow, then soften. She accepts the jar, dips one finger in, presses it just below her throat. Her shoulders drop. And for the first time, her reflection in the water holds still. She offers you a drink, something dark and floral. You decline. This isn't friendship, it's recognition. Two women who understand the difference between radiance and armor, between beauty used for favor and beauty worn like truth. She speaks, softer now. Do you think I became what they feared? You consider your words. I think they saw the glow, not the woman. She laughs once. No joy, just understanding. Before you leave, she hands you a scroll. Read it when you're ready. Back in your chamber, you unroll it. Not a recipe, a list, names, dates, oils, what was worn, what was won, what was lost. It reads like a war journal, except the weapons were rouge, the victories, glances, the casualties, everything else. At the bottom, one line. They remembered the glow, I remembered the price. You fold the scroll, not with sadness, with respect, because now you understand her glow was not a gift, it was a strategy, and she wielded it until it cut her too. You don't sleep that night, not out of fear, but out of awakening. The scroll from the Emperor's concubine rests beside your lamp, its ink still damp at the edges. You reread that final line again and again. They remembered the glow. I remembered the price. You sit with it. Let it echo, let it settle into the parts of you that once believed glow was always soft, always safe, always sweet. It isn't. It never was. You rise before dawn and step out into the frost-tipped courtyard, your slippers wet with dew. The world is silvered, the sky pale. The air carries no scent but clarity. You bring nothing with you, no jars, no brushes, not even a mirror. You need to feel your face without the expectation of changing it. There's a well just beyond the rear wall, half forgotten, ringed by bamboo. You dip your hands into the icy water and press it to your cheeks. It stings, but the kind of sting that reminds you you're here, alive, present, unguarded. There's a saying the older kitchen maids mutter when their hands chap from winter washing. The cold knows what's real. You finally understand. Because in this moment, your glow isn't balm or color or moonlight. It's breath, skin, grit. It's what remains when everything else is stripped away. Historians rarely write about these kinds of moments. Too small, too personal, too full of truth. But if they did, maybe they'd understand why so many women wrote their beauty recipes in code, why they passed them hand to hand instead of binding them in scrolls. Because beauty, real beauty, was never about surface. It was survival, a soft rebellion. A language spoken by those denied other forms of power. You dry your face on your sleeve, let the cold remain like a quiet reminder, and return inside. Today, you begin a new kind of practice. Not for glow, for grounding. You call it empty skin, no balms, no pigments, no perfumes, just clean water, still breath, and the quiet act of letting your skin be seen as it is. At first, people stare, a few gasp. One court lady whispers, "Is she ill?" But soon something else happens. They copy you, first the younger ones, then the older ones. Then, in secret, even the concubines. They go barefaced to breakfast, barefaced to temple, barefaced in the moonlight. The mirror polishers complain. Rouge merchants sulk, but no one stops them. Because the truth you've uncovered, that skin unadorned can glow with equal power, spreads like light in winter, clean, sharp, free. You do return to your balms eventually, but not the way you used to. You use them not to cover, but to care. A tiny jar of wild ginseng sits beside your pillow. A honey sesame salve waits near the brazier. A mint leaf mist hides beneath your robe for cold mornings. No longer tools of performance, now companions. Your reflection now looks back at you not with expectation, but with ease. And when you pass women in the halls, their bare faces catching light like poems unedited, you see it. Glow is not the goal. Glow is the byproduct of truth, and it only lasts if you let go of needing it to. It happens quietly. No fanfare, no decree, no royal announcement. But one by one, the official scrolls in the palace library begin to change. At first, it's subtle, an updated line in the medicinal ledger, noting that sesame balm can soothe more than skin. A marginal note beside an old recipe for peony powder, to be used with respect, not ambition. Then, more boldly, an entire chapter added to the temple's health codex, the role of spirit in skin. And finally, your name, not spelled out completely, not in bold script or gilded ink, just 3 syllables written beside a jar. This balm was adapted by her. No need to explain who her is. Everyone already knows. You run your fingers along the ink, feeling both seen and oddly separate from it, like the name belongs to someone you used to be, someone who glowed because she needed to, who used balm like armor, powder like punctuation. You leave the library with a scroll tucked under your arm and a strange fullness in your chest. Not pride, something softer. Gratitude, maybe. For the journey, for the skin you've lived in, for the quiet rituals that shaped you more than any title ever could. Back in your room, you prepare your final balm of the season. It isn't fancy. Ground barley, wild mugwort, the last of your stored clove oil, and a trace of snowmelt water saved from the last frost. You stir, slowly, not to combine but to remember. Each circle of your brush recalls a season, a lesson, a face. The girl who blistered and healed. The concubine who wielded glow like a sword. The maid who left you a pouch of petals in thanks. The aunt who taught you to laugh before blending. The monk who said glow must begin beneath the skin. You write nothing down. This one isn't for the scrolls. This balm is only for you. You apply it that evening under the quiet hush of snow which has finally begun to fall. Thin, silvery flakes drifting like lost whispers over the palace eaves. You sit at the window, no mirror, no lamp, just the reflection of yourself in the darkened glass, touched by snowlight, and you think, this is what legacy feels like. Not loud, not lasting, but present, woven into skin and steam and the soft scent of winter herbs. Historians may never tell this part of the story. They'll write about the glow, the formulas, the court trends and temple edicts, but not this, not the moment when you finally understood. Glow was never the secret ingredient. You were. Snow cloaks the palace now, softening every line, quieting every corner. It falls in thick flakes, floating like feathers from the sky, and the world feels slower, not heavy, just hushed, as though time itself is exhaling after a long season of holding its breath. You move through the halls with the confidence of someone who no longer needs to be seen to be felt. No paint on your lips, no shimmer on your cheeks, just skin, balm, memory, and presence. The younger girls still come, sometimes alone, sometimes in pairs. They bring you broken jars, half-written recipes, questions folded in scraps of silk. You always answer the same way. Let's start with what you're feeling, not what you're fixing. Because you've learned, glow doesn't come from correction. It comes from care. Your shelves no longer overflow with dozens of jars. Only 7 remain, each one made for a different kind of day. One for grief, one for laughter, one for nerves before speaking, one for remembering, one for forgetting, one for bare nights without mirrors, and one, the smallest, for celebration. They're not labelled. You choose by instinct, by mood, by scent and silence. Today, you choose none. You go barefaced into the courtyard, snow melting against your lashes. A rare thing, a private vow. Your aunt joins you, wrapping her shawl tighter. No balm, she teases, pretending to shiver. You smile. Only breath today. She nods. Understands. You both stand there for a long time, watching the snow gather on the branches. You speak of nothing urgent, No recipes, no scrolls, just stories, shared glances, the kind of conversation where the silence in between feels just as nourishing as the words. Later, in your chamber, you prepare one final balm, not for application, for giving. You wrap it in soft paper and tie it with a single plum blossom, a gift for a girl you haven't met yet. Someone, someday, who will need to know that glow is not bought, not bestowed. Not granted by mirrors or monarchs, but grown, earned, inhaled and exhaled like warmth. You place the package near your door with a small note. Glow slowly. No signature, no name, because legacy doesn't need one. It lingers in practice, in touch, in the quiet radiance of someone who once chose to light her own skin rather than wait for someone else to notice it. And when the palace bells ring low, echoing through the snow-muted courtyards, you sit by your lamp and close your eyes. No need to speak, no need to remember. Your skin remembers for you, and that's enough. Now, let it all fade. Let the palace walls fall quiet behind you, the halls emptying like breath from your lungs. Let the scent of barley and mint linger on the edges of memory, not sharp, not loud, just there, like a whisper you've heard before. Like the feeling of your own hands pressed gently to your cheeks in the hush before dawn. You've travelled far tonight, not just through time, but through texture, through powder and balm and silence, through the kind of beauty that doesn't ask to be looked at, only held, the kind that lives in quiet routines and glances that last a little too long, the kind that women in every age understand without needing to say it aloud. So rest now. You've earned it. Let your thoughts soften. Let your breath slow. Let your glow, yes, that glow settle not just on your skin but beneath it, because the secret wasn't the cream, it was the care, the intention, the decision to see yourself as worth tending to. And that, dear one, is where true beauty sleeps. Right here, in this moment, in you. Now let the snow fall quietly across your thoughts. Let the cold wind close the scrolls. Let your story rest. You can always open the jar again tomorrow. But tonight, you don't need it. You already shine.